The United States has announced further restrictions on the export of computer chip technology to China. The US will limit the shipment of advanced memory chips and more chip-making tools to China. Washington says the aim is to prevent Beijing using the most advanced semiconductors for its military modernisation. Professor Johanna Weaver is Director of the Tech Policy Design Centre at the Australian National University, and she joins us now from Taipei. Now, Professor Weaver, thank you for your time. This move was expected, but what exactly is the US doing here?
Well, what the US is doing is expanding on controls it placed on Chinese access to the most advanced semiconductor chips. So these chips, they're in your phones, they're in your microwaves, they're in your fridges, but it's the restrictions are very specifically only on the most advanced chips, which are used in really advanced research for artificial intelligence, for quantum computing. And so really it's designed to, the stated purpose is to prevent Chinese military developments. But the impact of this is much broader. It actually undermines the Chinese ability to conduct much broader research because these chips are very much dual use.
And these are the latest restrictions, as we said. So how does this build on the previous moves from the Biden administration?
Yeah, so back in 2022, and it's interesting, isn't it? Because everyone sort of thinks that the Trump administration has been much harsher or will be much harsher on China. But actually in 2022, the Biden administration made a move that I think is one of the most consequential moves that any US government has made since the end of the Cold War, which was this sweeping suite of restrictions on semiconductor access. And so at that point, they limited the actual export of the advanced chips. They limited software and tools to be exported to China, so China couldn't make its own chips. It limited the ability of researchers or anyone who had engaged or worked for US or allied companies to travel to China. And then it placed what they call extraterritorial application on top of all of those US provisions, saying this doesn't just apply to US citizens, it applies to any country in the world. And obviously they're targeting their US allies. At the same time, the US has invested really significantly, billions and billions of dollars, in advancing its own chips industry. So whilst they're trying to cut the legs off China, they are also doubling down and investing in their own capabilities so that they can become, have a sovereign capability that isn't dependent on countries like Taiwan, where a majority of these advanced semiconductor chips are made. And, in a situation of conflict, that does create some supply chain issues. And so the US is looking to shore up its own supply chain.
So tell us about the impact that it's going to have in China and how Beijing has responded to this.
So we haven't seen an official response to this round of chips impact. We have seen the Chinese respond very aggressively to the controls that have previously been announced. And I think it's fair to say that the reason that these new round of controls and limits have been put in place has been because China has found ways to circumvent the restrictions that were in place. So what we're seeing now with this new round of controls is that a number of additional companies have been placed on the list, which means that you need US permission before exporting to those companies. And investment companies for the first time have been listed. And again, a much broader list of equipment has been added. So, that would indicate to me that the US feels that China is finding ways to get around the measures that were previously put in place. And these new rounds of controls are designed to limit and I guess cut off that flow that China has managed to find a way around.
So how far behind would you say China is? And also we know that Donald Trump will again be calling the shots soon. What do you think he will do on that front?
Yeah, look, I think how far China behind is, there are people who spend their whole days trying to make that calculation. Some people say between 5 and 10 years. I say never underestimate the Chinese. It is incredibly complex, though, to build these types of advanced semiconductor chips. So, just to give you a sense of the complexity, the clean rooms in which these chips are manufactured are about 1,000 times cleaner than a surgical operating theatre. The machines are calibrated to take into account the rotation of the Earth and the gravitational pull. So, hugely sensitive equipment. As for exactly how far behind China is, I'll leave that to those who are more focused on it. And I'm sorry, I didn't grab your last question.
And how do you think, when Donald Trump is again calling the shots, what he will do on this front?
I think anyone who claims to know that they are aware of what Donald Trump will do is probably not someone I would trust. I would say, though, that this is very clearly a national security measure by the Biden administration. I think it would be unlikely for Trump to wind back this, particularly given the sovereign manufacturing capability that sits alongside the export control. So it's really designed to be boosting US industry, which very much fits within Trump's current platform. But as I say, anyone who can predict what Trump is doing, good luck to them.
Yeah, fair point. Professor Johanna Weaver from the Australian National University, joining us there from Taipei, where I know you've just visited the biggest chips manufacturer there in Taiwan. So thank you for taking the time to speak with us.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.